Commander Kira stared at the holographic display floating above her desk, her 4 eyes blinking in disbelief. The transmission had arrived just hours ago from Survey Station Omega, positioned at the very edge of known space. What she was seeing defied everything the Galactic Council taught about galactic history. "Computer, replay the message from the beginning," she commanded, her scaled fingers drumming against the polished surface of her command table. The blue-tinted hologram flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Survey Captain Nex. His usually composed demeanor was replaced by barely contained excitement. "Commander Kira, you need to see this. We've discovered structures on the dead world, designated as Sector 77 Alpha. But these aren't just any ruins, they're human." Kira's breath caught in her throat. Humans, the ghost species. The legendary race that supposedly existed before the great galactic civilization, before the Council, before recorded history itself. Most scholars dismiss them as mythology, stories created to explain the unexplainable gaps in archaeological records. The hologram continued as Captain Nex's team explored what appeared to be a vast underground complex. The architecture was unlike anything in the known galaxy, smooth curves blending with sharp angles, creating structures that seemed both organic and mechanical. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly with residual energy after millennia of abandonment. "The dating is consistent with the theoretical human timeline," Nex explained, his voice echoing through the buried corridors. "But Commander, there's something else. The preservation is remarkable. It's as if they wanted these places to be found." Kira paused the transmission and leaned back in her chair. As one of the Council's most respected Zen archaeologists, she had spent decades studying dead civilizations. But humans were different. They existed in whispers and fragments, in stories told by dying species, and in quantum echoes that made no scientific sense. The official position was clear. Humans were a myth, a collective delusion born from the galaxy's need to believe in something greater than themselves. The Council had made this decision final 50 years ago, declaring any further research into human existence a waste of resources. But Kira had never believed that ruling. She had seen too many coincidences, too many unexplained artifacts that pointed to something real, something waiting to be discovered. Her communication console chimed softly. "Commander," her aide's voice filtered through the speaker, "the Council is requesting your immediate response to the Omega transmission. They want your recommendation on whether to pursue this alleged discovery." Kira stared at the frozen hologram, showing the mysterious human ruins. Every logical part of her mind screamed that this was another dead end, another false hope that would lead nowhere. The Council expected her to dismiss it, to file it away with all the other supposed human sightings that had proven to be elaborate hoaxes or misidentified alien ruins. But something deep in her core told her this was different. "Prepare my ship," she said finally, her voice steady despite the racing of her hearts. "I'm going to Sector 77 Alpha." "Commander," the Council specifically requested. "The Council will have my report when I return," Kira interrupted. "But I won't dismiss this without investigating personally. If there's even the smallest chance that humans were real, that they left something behind, then we owe it to galactic history to find out. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Cosmic Whispers is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. As her ship prepared for departure, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to discover something that would change everything. The galaxy had spent centuries convinced that they were alone, that no species had come before them with greater wisdom or technology. But what if they were wrong? What if humans hadn't disappeared? What if they had simply been waiting for the right moment to return? The stars held answers, and Commander Kira intended to find them, regardless of what the Council might say. Little did she know that her decision would set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. The journey to Sector 77 Alpha took Commander Kira 3 standard galactic days, during which she studied every scrap of data about the mysterious ruins. Her ship, the Starseeker, was equipped with the most advanced archaeological scanning equipment in the Council fleet, but even she wasn't prepared for what awaited her. The dead world hung in space like a gray pearl, its surface scarred by ancient impacts and geological upheavals. No atmosphere registered on her sensors, no signs of life, yet the quantum signatures were unlike anything she had encountered in decades of exploration. "Commander," her pilot, Lieutenant Vale, announced from the bridge, "we're receiving the same energy readings that Captain Nex reported. Whatever's down there, it's still active after all these centuries." Kira nodded, her excitement building with each passing moment. She had brought a minimal crew, just 5 specialists who shared her passion for uncovering galactic mysteries. The Council had grudgingly approved the mission, but made it clear they expected her to return with proof that this was yet another false alarm. The shuttle descent was smooth, landing near the coordinates Captain Nex had provided. As they stepped onto the surface, Kira was struck by the profound silence of the world. No wind, no geological activity, nothing but the sound of their own breathing within their environmental suits. The entrance to the underground complex was exactly as the transmission had shown, a smooth archway that seemed to have been carved from a single piece of unknown metal. The symbols around its perimeter pulsed with a soft blue-white light that grew brighter as they approached. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Lin, her chief linguistics expert. "The symbols aren't following any known pattern. They're not pictographic, not mathematical. It's as if they're responding to our presence." Inside, the complex was vast beyond imagination. Corridors stretched in directions that seemed to bend the laws of physics, leading to chambers filled with machinery that hummed with dormant power. The architecture defied conventional understanding, walls that curved impossibly, ceilings that seemed to extend into infinity, floors that felt solid despite appearing translucent. "Commander," called out her engineer, Specialist J, "you need to see this." He had discovered what appeared to be a central chamber, dominated by a massive crystalline structure that rose from floor to ceiling. The crystal pulsed with the same blue-white light as the entrance symbols, but as they approached, the intensity increased dramatically. "It's some kind of beacon," Jay said, running his scanner over the surface. "But the power source." "Commander, this thing has been running for over 1,000 years without any external fuel source. The technology is completely beyond our understanding." Dr. Lin was studying the symbols that covered every surface of the chamber. "These aren't just decorative," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're instructions, or maybe they're a message." "What kind of message?" Kira asked, stepping closer to the crystalline beacon. "I can't translate it completely, but I'm seeing patterns that suggest ... waiting, patience, and something about when the children return home." Kira felt a chill run down her spine. Children returning home? Could this be referring to the mythical human diaspora that some legends spoke of? The idea that humans had scattered across the galaxy before vanishing from known space. "Commander," Jay called urgently, "the beacon is responding to something. The energy output is increasing exponentially." The chamber filled with light as the crystalline structure began to resonate with a deep, harmonic tone that seemed to vibrate through their very bones. The symbols on the walls blazed with increasing intensity, creating patterns that shifted and flowed like living language. "It's activating," Dr. Lin breathed, her instruments going wild with readings. "But we didn't touch anything. What could be triggering it?" The answer came with a sound that none of them had ever heard before, a deep, resonant pulse that seemed to originate from the beacon itself, but somehow extended far beyond the chamber. Beyond the planet, out into the depths of space. "It's transmitting," Jay said, his voice barely a whisper. "The beacon is sending a signal into deep space. But Commander ... the power required for a transmission of this magnitude. It would have to reach across multiple star systems." Kira stared at the beacon as understanding dawned on her. This wasn't just a monument or a repository of knowledge. It was a lighthouse, a signal fire that had been waiting for centuries to be lit. And now that it was active, it was calling to something or someone in the vast darkness between the stars. "Pack everything," she ordered, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had discovered. "We need to return to the Council immediately." But even as they prepared to leave, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late. The beacon's signal was traveling at impossible speeds through hyperspace, carrying a message that would soon reach its intended recipients. Somewhere in the void, Something had been waiting for this call. And now it was coming home. The council chamber erupted in chaos as Commander Kira finished her report. Representatives from dozens of species argued, their voices creating a cacophony of disbelief and fear that echoed through the vast dome-shaped hall. Impossible! Shouted Counselor Vex, his tentacles writhing with agitation. Humans are mythology. We've established this beyond question. The evidence is irrefutable, Kira replied, maintaining her composure despite the hostility radiating from the assembly. The beacon is active, the transmission has been sent, and we have recorded everything. High Chancellor Mora, the council's eldest member, raised one of her 6 arms for silence. Her ancient voice carried the weight of centuries as she spoke. Commander Kira, you realize what you're suggesting? That an entire species, supposedly extinct for millennia, has been hiding somewhere in the galaxy? Before Kira could respond, every communication panel in the chamber began flashing simultaneously. Emergency signals flooded the council's networks as reports streamed in from monitoring stations across the galaxy. High Chancellor, came the voice of the communications director. We're receiving unusual readings from hyperspace. Multiple contacts approaching our position at impossible speeds. The great holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Dozens of contacts were emerging from hyperspace, their energy signatures unlike anything in the Council's databases. Ships, whispered Counselor Dane, his normally steady voice trembling. Those are ships, but the technology ... The first vessel to emerge fully from hyperspace was beautiful in its alien simplicity. Sleek lines flowed like water frozen in motion, and its hull seemed to absorb and reflect light in ways that made it difficult to focus on. It was neither large nor imposing by Council standards, yet something about its presence made the assembled representatives fall silent. We're being hailed, announced the communications director. Audio and visual transmission incoming. The chamber's main screen activated, revealing a figure that made every being present catch their breath. The creature was tall and lean, with pale skin and strange, bilateral symmetry. Its eyes were a startling blue color, and hair the shade of autumn leaves fell around its shoulders. But most remarkable of all, it looked exactly like the artistic depictions found in the ruins on 7-7 Alpha. Greetings, the figure said, its voice carrying an odd harmonic quality that seemed to resonate with something deep in every listener's core. I am Captain Tom of the human vessel Wanderer. We received your beacon's call. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Finally, High Chancellor Mora found her voice. You ... You claim to be human? Captain Tom smiled, an expression that somehow conveyed both sadness and hope. We are the children who were scattered to the winds, searching for our lost brothers and sisters. For over 1,000 years, we have wandered the void between galaxies, following faint signals and ancient star maps, hoping to find traces of those who came before us. But the records, Counselor Vex stammered. Humans were never a spacefaring species. You were primitive, barely evolved from your planetary origins. That's what you were meant to believe, Tom replied, his expression growing somber. Our ancestors left false records, hiding the truth of our exodus. We didn't disappear because we were weak or primitive. We left because we had to. The implications of his words sent shock waves through the assembly. Commander Kira stepped forward, her scientific mind racing with questions. Why? She asked simply. Why did your people leave? Tom's image flickered slightly as he seemed to consider his words carefully. Because we saw what was coming. Our precursors, the true first humans, they had gifts that frightened other species. The ability to adapt, to survive, to thrive in any environment. They could learn any language, master any technology, bond with any species. They were teachers, explorers, bridge builders between worlds. And that frightened people, High Chancellor. Mora said, understanding beginning to dawn in her ancient eyes. Yes, Tom confirmed. Our ancestors saw the signs of a coming war, a conflict that would consume the galaxy. So they scattered us across the void, hiding our true nature, making you appear as myths and legends. They hoped that when the time was right, when the galaxy was ready, we could return and help build something better. How many of you are there? Kira asked, though she suspected she might not want to know the answer. Tom's smile returned, but this time it held a weight that spoke of centuries of loneliness and determination. We stopped counting after the first 10,000 ships joined our fleet. But every year, more of our scattered colonies answer the call. Every year, more humans remember who they truly are. The chamber erupted once again, but this time the voices carried a different tone. Not anger or disbelief, but wonder and fear in equal measure. The galaxy had been wrong about everything. Humans weren't myths, they were the missing piece of galactic history. The shepherds who had been waiting in the darkness for their time to return. And now, that time had come. In the days following first contact, the galaxy transformed from curiosity to chaos as more human ships emerged from the void. Each vessel that appeared brought with it technologies and capabilities that defied conventional understanding, forcing the Council to confront the reality that their entire view of galactic history had been carefully orchestrated fiction. Commander, Kira found herself serving as the unofficial liaison between the Council and the growing human fleet. Captain Tom had requested specifically to work with her, claiming that her discovery of the beacon had awakened something that had been sleeping for too long. "Your people," Kira said during one of their many conversations aboard the Wanderer. "They're not what we expected." Tom guided her through corridors that seemed to shift and adapt to their presence. Walls displaying star maps and scientific data that updated in real time. What did you expect, honestly? Either primitive survivors clinging to outdated technology, or conquerors arriving to reclaim lost territory? She paused, studying a display showing the molecular structure of an unknown element. "Instead, you're teachers. That's what we've always been," Tom replied, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "Our ancestors didn't scatter us across the void to hide from the galaxy. They sent us out to learn from it. Every species we encountered, every world we explored, every challenge we faced, it all became part of who we are." They entered what Tom called the memory chamber, a vast space filled with floating crystals that contained the recorded experiences of countless human generations. Each crystal pulsed with different colors, representing different colonies, different adaptations, different evolutionary paths. "This is how we survived," Tom explained, touching one of the crystals. Immediately, Kira's mind was filled with images of humans living in the crushing depths of ocean worlds, their bodies adapted with gills and enhanced pressure tolerance. Another crystal showed humans thriving in the radiation-soaked environment. Near stellar cores, their skin translucent and their eyes adapted to see across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. "You didn't just survive," Kira breathed, overwhelmed by the scope of human adaptation. "You evolved." Each colony became something new, something perfectly suited to their environment. "And yet we remained human," Tom said. "That's our gift infinite. Adaptability without losing our core nature. We can become anything the universe requires, but we never forget who we are at heart." The implications were staggering. While the rest of the galaxy had developed along predictable lines, limited by their biological origins and environmental constraints, humans had become something unprecedented, a species that could literally transform itself to meet any challenge while maintaining its essential identity. "The Council is terrified," Kira admitted. "They're seeing reports of human colonies that can survive in pure vacuum, others that can manipulate matter at the quantum level, some that communicate through pure energy. They don't know whether to worship you or declare war." Tom's expression grew serious. "They should be concerned, but not for the reasons they think. We didn't return to conquer or rule. We came back because something is coming, something that threatens not just this galaxy, but existence itself." Before Kira could ask what he meant, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Tom's demeanor shifted instantly, becoming focused and determined in a way that reminded Kira that beneath their peaceful exterior, these humans were survivors of unimaginable trials. "What is it?" she asked as they hurried toward the command center. "A test," Tom replied grimly. "The universe has a way of providing exactly the challenges we need, exactly when we need them most." The command center was a marvel of organic technology, with control surfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. The main display showed the space around 77 Alpha, where the beacon continued to pulse its signal into the void. "Captain," reported one of Tom's crew members, a woman whose skin had a faint metallic sheen that suggested cybernetic integration. "We're detecting massive hyperspace distortions. Something big is coming through." "How big?" Tom asked, his hands moving across controls that seemed to anticipate his commands. "Fleet-sized, and Captain ... The energy signatures match nothing in our databases. These aren't any known species." Tom nodded grimly, as if he had been expecting this news. "Signal the Council fleet. Tell them to prepare for combat, but under no circumstances are they to engage without our authorization." "Tom," Kira said urgently, "what's happening? Who's coming?" He turned to her, and she saw in his eyes the weight of knowledge accumulated across centuries of wandering the void. "The Devourers," he said simply. "The reason our ancestors scattered in the first place. They've been following our beacon signals, tracking us across the galaxy. They finally found us. What do they want?" Tom's smile was sad but determined. "Everything, Commander. They want to consume everything that exists, every trace of life and consciousness in the universe. And now, thanks to our return, they know exactly where to find the greatest concentration of sentient life in the galaxy." The display erupted with new contacts as ships began emerging from hyperspace vessels of impossible size and malevolent design, their very presence seeming to drain light from the surrounding space. "The real test begins now," Tom said, his voice carrying across the command center. "The Council is about to discover why humans were scattered across the void, and why we spent 1,000 years becoming something more than we once were. The galaxy was about to witness the true power of humanity unleashed." The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of darkness, their ships defying every principle of physics and aesthetics known to galactic civilization. Each vessel appeared to be grown rather than built, their organic surfaces pulsing with veins of sickly light that seemed to drain energy from the very fabric of space around them. Commander Kira watched from the bridge of the Wanderer as the Council fleet scrambled to form defensive positions around 77 Alpha. Even their most powerful dreadnoughts looked like toys compared to the massive bioships that continued pouring through dimensional rifts in space. 1,200 contacts and rising," reported the metallic-skinned crew member Tom had called Maya. "Mass readings are ... inconsistent. It's like they exist partially outside normal spacetime." "They do," Tom confirmed, his hands dancing across control surfaces that responded to his thoughts. "The Devourers don't just consume matter and energy. They consume the fundamental forces that hold reality together. That's why our ancestors knew they couldn't be fought with conventional weapons." The lead Devourer ship, a nightmare of twisted organic architecture the size of a small moon, began broadcasting on all frequencies. The signal was pure malevolence given form, a psychic scream that caused several Council representatives to collapse in agony despite being light years away. "Why do they communicate at all?" Kira asked, struggling to maintain her composure as waves of alien hatred washed over her mind. "They don't," Tom replied grimly. "That's not communication, it's digestion. They're already beginning to break down the quantum cohesion of local space. In approximately 6 hours, this entire star system will collapse into a feeding void." The Council fleet opened fire, their most advanced weapons lancing out in brilliant displays of destructive force. Plasma cannons, quantum disruptors, and gravitational warheads struck the Devourer ships and accomplished absolutely nothing. The attacks were simply absorbed, adding to the alien vessel's already impossible energy readings. "Council fleet is requesting immediate assistance," Maya reported. "Their weapons are ineffective, and they're beginning to suffer catastrophic system failures from proximity to the Devourer energy fields." Tom nodded and turned to Kira. "What you're about to see, Commander, is why humanity scattered across the void. Not to hide from the Devourers, but to become something capable of standing against them." He touched a control, and the space around 77 Alpha began to shimmer with new hyperspace distortions. But these weren't chaotic rifts like the Devourers created. These were precise, controlled openings that spoke of mastery over the fundamental forces of the universe. The first human ship to emerge wasn't like the Wanderer. This vessel seemed to be made of pure crystallized starlight, its hull shifting between states of matter and patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was followed by another ship that appeared to be carved from compressed spacetime itself, and another that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The Deep Fleet," Tom said softly, reverence clear in his voice. "Humans who adapted to live in the void between galaxies, who learned to manipulate dark matter and quantum foam. They've been traveling for 800 years to reach this moment." More ships appeared, vessels that challenged the very definition of what a ship could be. Some were pure energy matrices held together by will and consciousness. Others were living creatures the size of asteroids. Their biomechanical systems evolved far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. A few seemed to be folded space itself, existing as geometric impossibilities that somehow functioned perfectly. "How many?" Kira whispered, watching as the human fleet continued to grow. "Every colony that survived," Tom replied. "Every scattered group that adapted and evolved and became something new. 60,000 years of human development compressed into 1,000 years of desperate innovation." The Devourers seemed to sense the change in the battle's dynamic. Their psychic scream intensified, and they began to move with purpose rather than their previous predatory leisure. The largest bioships turned toward the human fleet, energy discharges crackling between their organic weapon arrays. What happened? Nextified everything Kira thought she understood about warfare, physics, and the nature of existence itself. The humans didn't fire weapons, they rewrote reality. Ships made of crystallized starlight began converting the Devourer's own energy attacks into pure information, feeding it into quantum computers that calculated the exact frequency needed to disrupt their biomolecular cohesion. The living asteroid creatures sang in harmonics that caused space itself to reject the Devourer's presence, forcing them back toward the dimensional rifts they had emerged from. Most spectacular of all, the ships made of folded space began to expand, creating localized regions where the laws of physics operated according to human will rather than universal constants. Within these zones, the Devourers found themselves subject to rules they couldn't adapt to. Their reality-consuming abilities turned back on themselves. "This is impossible," Kira breathed, watching as beings she had thought were mythical demonstrated capabilities that transcended everything she believed about the limits of evolution and technology. "No," Tom said, his eyes reflecting the light of battles being fought across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "This is what happens when you give humans 1,000 years to solve an impossible problem. We don't accept that anything is truly impossible, we just haven't figured out how to do it yet." The battle was over in less than an hour. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed unstoppable, was either destroyed or driven back through the dimensional rifts they had created. The surviving bioships fled into hyperspace, their psychic screaming fading into the cosmic background noise. As the immediate threat ended, the human fleet began to disperse, some ships returning to whatever distant corners of the universe they had come from, others remaining to help repair the damage caused by the Devourer's presence. Tom turned to Kira, his expression mixing exhaustion with satisfaction. "Now you understand, Commander. This is why we scattered, why we evolved, why we became myths and legends. Because someone had to be ready for the day when the galaxy needed defenders who could stand against the impossible." Looking out at the assembled fleets, council ships working alongside human vessels to restore normal spacetime to the system, Kira realized that everything had changed. The galaxy would never again see humans as myths or primitives. They had revealed themselves as guardians, protectors who had sacrificed their own unified civilization to become something capable of defending all life against threats that transcended conventional understanding. The age of legends was over. The age of humanity had begun anew.